Now, the level above that is you've got people who are operating, they are working every day, but they're operating in low leverage opportunities, right? So they're doing things that do not give them a lot of return on their time, right? And so it's like I could work, it doesn't matter how many hours I work at McDonald's, like it's very, very difficult to become wealthy there, right? It's just near impossible, right? Versus like you could buy a building for $10 million and then sell it to somebody else for $11 million, just get the contract and make $1 million on the exchange. Super high leverage, right? From a time perspective, which is crazy for somebody who doesn't have money to even contemplate something like that. But the only way that happened, and that required no money, is skill, right? And so like that's an example of like it didn't require money to make that money. That's skill that's required to do that. And so first is the time, right? People are not doing stuff with the time that they have, or they're doing low leverage activities with the time they have. And then they're not trying to increase their output per unit time, which means investing in their skill set. So like one of the easiest ways to gain leverage on your time, and when I say leverage, just for everybody, like leverage is the difference between inputs and outputs in a system. So, Archimedes said, if you give me a lever long enough, I can move the world. And so to the same degree, if you have enough skills, you can do anything, right? And so skills give you leverage on your time. So you get more out of each unit of time. So if I'm a master cold caller, I will get more sales and calls booked for the same unit of time as somebody who sucks at it. Same time, more output. Right?
But because they developed the skill at a masterful level.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when people are allocating their time, they're not by percentage, they're kind of like consuming their time rather than investing their time. So they're either doing nothing or they're consuming the time rather than putting time into getting higher returns on their time, which is education, right? And so education you can have from like the conceptual learnings, watching stuff like this, or the actual doing, right? And so, you learn
taking
more.
action,
100%.
failing, messing up, feeling like an embarrassment in the act. Do we overcomplicate money in our minds if we've been taught stories as kids or been taught beliefs about it? And how do we get over the overcomplication of making seven figures as entrepreneurs?
I agree with you that I think it gets overcomplicated, and so we just have to boil it down to the first principles of the math. Like what math is required to make $1 million, right? Like we can either sell, 100 $10,000 things, we can sell 1,000 $1,000 things, we can sell, and when I say things, you don't have to price your product at $1,000, your just lifetime value of the customer has to be $1,000, right? So just how much somebody's gonna spend with you over the period of time that they buy from you in general, right? Now if you sell those products, that might just be the lifetime value, but if you sell services like the dog guy, he probably has people who stay with him for years. And so he has to add up that total lifetime value as the number. And it's like, well, how many of those do I need to sell? And then you just divide it by, to back into it. And so once you know the math, right? So the first is like, what is the math to get to the million? And you have to figure out how many units you're gonna sell. So let's just use something that's, let's use $1,000 because it's an easy one. Okay,
so 1,000 sales of $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to do 1,000 sales. Now, how are we going to break that down on an annual basis? Because 1,000 sounds like a huge number. Well, it's about 3 a day, right? Like, okay, well, 3 a day is all of a sudden a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, what creates a sale? So at some point, to get set, I'm going to take one step before for 6 figures for anybody who's not there. It's like you have to sell, and this is again for business owners, entrepreneurs. If you have a job, then awesome. But like if you're trying to make money, it's you have to sell something to someone. That's it. That's all you have to do to get to 6 figures. To do that. So that's one avatar, one medium, one channel, right? One product, one channel. That's all that is. You add the fourth piece, which is consistency. Right, that's what goes from 6 to 7.
That's hard for people.
And the consistent, 100%, because then you can tackle all the emotional or whatever it is that why you're not being consistent. But from a math perspective, we just have to break down what are the primary actions that result in the output, right? And so if 3 sales means that I sell 1 out of 3 people who want to walk, or 1 out of 2 people who come for the dog walking. Okay, well then I need 6 appointments a day. Okay, how do I get 6 appointments a day? It's like, well, I have 6 ways that I can get appointments, right? I can get appointments from referrals. I get appointments from affiliates. So I make a deal with the local grooming place for dogs, or the local vet for dogs, or
put my flyers up or something,
or the urgent care for dogs, or Petco, like whatever. I mean, there's a million ways, right? Like I get one of those guys, I figure out how to deal with them, and I say, I'll give you the first 2 months of what they pay me to you if you just send them to me.
Yes.
More money for them, and it probably helps their customers because it's a need that they can't solve, but they have the same avatar. Cool. So you got referrals, you got affiliates. You've got, you could just reach out to people just one-on-one, like, hey, I've got my thing, do you need help with your dog? You can reach out to people you don't know, which you can do through post-it notes, cold calls, emails, door knocking, like flyers, all of those.
What would need to shift inside of you after 3 months of feeling no cash flow come in to stack your bank account in order for you to be okay with it, to get to that billion quicker?
I would just have to be more secure, just realistically. Like I use.
What does that mean? Is that an internal?
I use cash flow from businesses as evidence to the fact that I'm not a failure. And so I've always, like, it has been easier for me to change my conditions than to change who I am. And so I have used my material success and accolades to quiet the voices of not being good enough. And so for that, like, me having that, if I have that little voice that peeps up, it's like, hey, look at that. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm okay. I'm not that bad.
This money just came in every month.
I'm not that bad, right? And so I'd really have to re-engineer the conversation I have with myself around how I value myself. Because then people are like, well, if everything disappeared, how would you feel about yourself? I like to think that I would be uncomfortable and then I would change my views, but I haven't needed to do that yet, and so my effort goes elsewhere.
Right.
But that's what probably would have to happen in order for me to make that change.
What is the thing that you're afraid of inside of yourself? Is it a self-worth thing? Is it a self-love thing? Is it a belief that you're not good enough?
Yeah, definitely be a good enough thing, for sure. Yeah, it's just like maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe everything that I've been putting on media, maybe my book, maybe all these things are actually not true and I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Because clearly I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not making any money. Like, so these things have been, that's why Acquisition.com is the other half, like the actual businesses of Acquisition.com compared to the media of Acquisition.com. It is the other half because it's the evidence of the fact that the things that I say are true.
Because those are getting results.
100%.
And they're growing.
Right, and so that way I feel bulletproof when I make the content, when I make the book, when I write the stuff. Like, there's a zillion people who are like, you suck, none of this is true, whatever. And for me, it rolls off my back because I have evidence.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it is true, and here's how. But if I didn't have that, I would probably have to, it's because I don't know what the right call is there. Because if I didn't have the evidence, it would be hard for me to say you're wrong because I don't have any proof that they're wrong.
But you have evidence now.
Right, and so I have this evidence.
So how do you change the belief inside that you're good enough with the years of evidence now?
The question is like, have I built $1 billion thing yet? You know what I mean? And so
that'll be 10 billion.
Yeah. Oh, of course. No, but like it's a fun convo, and it's great because this was wonderful, Lewis, because I get to see my own limiting beliefs. And just for everyone who's listening, like, everyone deals with this. You know what I mean? At every level, you're dealing with this of like feeling of inadequacy. Feeling not good enough, feeling like you're not smart, feeling like you don't work hard, whatever it is. Like, I have that stuff all the time because you think that the external circumstance is gonna solve that. And I would say that it does to a degree. It becomes a crutch.
Right.
But then you have this crutch and then you just tie your self-worth to the accolade or the thing rather than still yourself. And maybe I need to do more work on that, who knows?
If you could overcome one thing or eliminate one thing internally to become a better leader to yourself, to quiet the noise
100%.
or help you take a risk in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about lose all your money, but
Totally.
take the risk to help you accelerate this.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, by the way, but I just believe that it's possible for you to do that.
Yeah.
I believe you can be a billionaire in 2.5 years.
I appreciate it.
That's
the goal.
If you shift whatever inside of you is holding you back to get to that space. What would be that one thing to eliminate or overcome internally to make it happen?
Is need for external validation, 100%.
The need for external validation.
Why do you need I knew when you started the question.
Why do you need external validation?
I mean, I think part of it's so ingrained in us. If you think about us as kids, right? Like, how do you orient yourself with the world? You get reinforced or punished at all phases, directly, indirectly. But you get reinforced or punished, and the things that you get reinforced, you do more of. The things you get punished, you do less of, right? Like, that's just how we learn behavior, how we learn to function in society, right? Touch that thing, it hurts. We got punished. Okay, your parent tells you to sit down and be quiet and eat, and you learn to sit down and shut up